In the quiet town of Maple Hollow, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets burned hotter than fire, one man's tragedy would uncover something darker than anyone could imagine. This is the story of Daniel Hurst, a man who lost everything in a fire until his neighbor's secret came to light. It was supposed to be an ordinary Thursday night. Daniel had just come home from his shift at the steel plant. He was tired, hungry, and ready to collapse into his favorite chair with a beer and his old Labrador, Max. But at 11:42 p.m., flames erupted from his living room window. By the time firefighters arrived, the entire house was swallowed in fire. Daniel survived. Max didn't, and with that, his entire life turned to ashes. In the days that followed, investigators called it an electrical fault, a tragic accident. Case closed. But something didn't sit right with Daniel. He'd always been careful. Every wire, every socket in that old house had been checked and rechecked. And then came the first clue. Something small, something easy to overlook. In the soot near what used to be his front door, Daniel found a strange, circular burn mark like a ring melted into the floorboards. The fire marshal brushed it off. But Daniel couldn't. Weeks passed. Daniel slept in his truck, eating canned food, wandering through the ruins of his home each day. And that's when he noticed. The man next door, Tom Greeley. Tom had always been polite, but distant. Retired mechanic, lived alone. After the fire, though, Tom seemed nervous. He avoided Daniel's gaze, spoke in short sentences, and always seemed to be watching. At first, Daniel thought it was just paranoia, the trauma talking. But one night, sitting in the cab of his truck, Daniel saw something through Tom's window that made his blood run cold. Tom was burning something, papers, in a small barrel behind his shed. And on top of that fire was a framed photograph of Daniel and his late wife. Daniel didn't move, didn't breathe. He just watched, frozen, as the man who lived 50 feet away from him fed his memories to the flames. The next morning, Daniel confronted Tom, but Tom only smiled, that half smirk that hides a lifetime of arrogance, and said, "It's a shame what happened, Danny boy. But some fires are meant to happen," and that's when Daniel knew. This wasn't an accident. Daniel went to the police, armed with his suspicions. They listened politely, but Tom was a veteran firefighter, once decorated for bravery. The idea that he'd burn down someone's home, unthinkable. They told Daniel to move on, but Daniel didn't. Instead, he started digging. Late nights at the library, calls to old friends from Tom's firehouse days, and piece by piece, a pattern began to emerge. Tom Greeley wasn't who everyone thought he was. 3 years earlier, there had been another fire. Different town, same story, a house burned down, insurance payout, and guess who was the investigating firefighter on duty? Tom Greeley. Daniel brought his evidence to the police again, but by then, Tom was already packing to leave town. The officer promised to look into it, but Daniel could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe him. So Daniel decided to take matters into his own hands. He followed Tom that night, through the rain, past the old mill, down to the edge of Lake Miller. There, Tom was loading something heavy into his truck bed, a metal container, sealed tight. Daniel hid behind a tree, heart pounding. He could smell the gasoline. When Tom drove off, Daniel trailed him all the way to a remote cabin at the forest edge, a place that didn't appear on any map. And what Daniel saw through the window confirmed everything. Inside that cabin were photographs of every house that had burned, insurance papers, newspaper clippings, even trophies, pieces of melted wood, scraps of scorched metal. Tom Greeley wasn't just an arsonist. He was a collector, and the ring-shaped burn Daniel had seen at his doorstep. It matched the base of Tom's signature kerosene lamp, The one sitting right there, glowing on the table. Daniel knew he had to act fast. He took photos, gathered what he could, and went straight to the sheriff. This time, they listened. They raided the cabin the next morning. But when they got there, Tom was gone. The cabin, set ablaze, everything inside turned to smoke. Only one thing survived, the kerosene lamp, found shattered near the door. And beneath it, a note written in trembling ink. Some fires cleanse Daniel. Some reveal. Daniel rebuilt his life slowly. People finally believed him. Justice, it seemed, had been served, at least in part. But every night when he closed his eyes, he could still see that orange glow, still smell the smoke, and still wonder if Tom Greeley was out there watching. Because 2 weeks later, in a town 50 miles away, a new fire broke out. And among the ashes, investigators found something chilling, a ring-shaped burn mark. He lost everything in a fire. But what if that fire was only the beginning? The morning the news broke, Daniel's heart stopped. Another house, another fire, another life lost. The image on the TV made his blood run cold. The same circular burn mark in the center of the rubble, glowing faintly in the morning light. It was Tom's signature. Daniel had hoped it was over. He had convinced himself that Tom Greeley had burned in his own flames, that justice had a way of balancing itself out. But deep down, he knew better. Tom wasn't dead. He was sending a message. The fire had happened in Rainsford, a quiet town an hour north. The victim was a single mother named Alice Monroe, known for running a small bakery. Her house went up in flames overnight. Investigators ruled it a possible gas leak, but Daniel knew the truth. He could feel it. He packed his truck and drove to Rainsford before dawn. As he pulled into the neighborhood, a familiar unease settled over him. The crowd stood behind yellow tape, watching smoke still rising from the ashes. Daniel approached one of the firefighters, flashing his old badge from the steel plant, pretending to be a safety inspector. The firefighter barely looked up. "We've seen this before," he muttered. Weird pattern in the floorboards, like someone stamped it with heat. Daniel's chest tightened. "A ring?" The man frowned. "Yeah, you've seen it too?" That was all Daniel needed to hear. He walked away before anyone asked more questions. The smell of smoke clung to his jacket as he scanned the scene, eyes sharp, searching for any trace, any sign that Tom had been here. And then he saw it, parked across the street. Half hidden behind an oak tree was a rusted blue pickup truck, the same make and model Tom used to drive. Daniel's pulse thundered. He crossed the street, keeping low, checking the truck's plates. They were gone, replaced with a temporary tag. He looked through the window. On the passenger seat lay a matchbook. On the cover, in faded gold letters, were the words, Lake Miller Lodge. Daniel froze. That cabin had burned down. The police had cleared the site months ago. So why was Tom leaving clues? That night, Daniel returned to Lake Miller. The rain fell hard, the same way it had the night he followed Tom before. The road was empty, the forest darker than ever. But when he reached the clearing where the cabin once stood, something new had taken its place, a small metal shed, freshly built. The padlock was still wet from rain. The air smelled of gasoline. Daniel crouched, listening. There was movement inside, soft scraping sounds like metal against wood. He held his breath, then whispered, "Tom." Silence. He took a step closer. The lock was cheap. One hard shove and it snapped open. He pushed the door slowly, letting the beam of his flashlight cut through the dark. What he saw inside made his stomach twist. On the far wall hung photographs, dozens of them. Burned houses, ash-covered faces, and right in the middle, a photo of Daniel himself, taken from across the street. He was standing by his new home, unaware. Below it was a map of the county, dotted with red pins. The next pin was marked just 3 miles from where Daniel now lived. He stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. On the workbench lay a single object, a freshly polished kerosene lamp, identical to the one from before. Next to it, a note: "You learned my fire, Daniel. Now you'll learn my legacy." Daniel felt a surge of dread and fury all at once. He grabbed the lamp, trying to steady his hands. Beneath the table, something caught his eye, a metal box with wires leading out the side. His instincts screamed. He dropped the lamp and ran. The explosion tore through the woods behind him. The shed went up in flames, the sound echoing across Lake Miller. He hit the dirt, covering his head, feeling the heat lick his back. When he looked up, all that remained was fire and smoke. But something was different this time. This wasn't just revenge. Tom was building something bigger, a pattern, a message, maybe even an army of flames waiting to be lit. The next day, the sheriff called Daniel in. They'd found his fingerprints at the scene, his flashlight in the dirt, and his truck parked nearby. Suddenly, he wasn't the victim anymore. He was the suspect. Every word he said about Tom sounded like a story too wild to believe. The sheriff leaned back in his chair, staring at him coldly. "You're telling me a dead firefighter is haunting you with arsons across the state?" Daniel's voice cracked. "He's not dead. He wants me to take the blame, but there was no proof. Every clue had burned away. Every photo, every note, gone in the fire. They let him go after questioning, but not without warning. Leave this alone. Hurst, whatever you think you're chasing, it's going to burn you next." That night, Daniel sat alone on his porch, staring into the dark. The wind smelled faintly of smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. He knew it before the news confirmed it. Another fire. Another pen on Tom's map. He opened his glove box and pulled out the last photo he had left of. Tom, a picture taken during his firehouse days, grinning in his uniform. On the back, in faded handwriting, were the words, "Only fire tells the truth." Daniel clenched the photo. If Tom wanted to leave a legacy of flames, he would meet him there, in the fire. He got up, started the truck, and drove into the night, following the glow that flickered on the horizon. Somewhere out there, the man who had destroyed his life was still playing with matches. And this time, Daniel wasn't running. He was hunting. The road twisted through the woods as the orange glow grew brighter ahead. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. He answered, voice shaking. "Hello?" A pause, then a familiar voice, low and rasping. "You shouldn't have come back, Danny boy." The line went dead. Daniel's grip tightened on the wheel as he drove toward the fire, the reflection of the flames dancing in his eyes. Because this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about ending the fire for good. Hurst's nightmare reignites when a new blaze in a nearby town bears the same haunting mark that destroyed his home. As he hunts the man he once thought dead, the arsonist Tom Greeley, Daniel uncovers a chilling pattern of revenge, deception, an obsession that stretches far beyond his own tragedy. But when the flames begin to follow him, he realizes he's no longer just the victim, he's the target. A gripping tale of justice, fear, and the dangerous line between truth and madness.